Hello, this is Coach Tim Campbell, and I'm your host for the Self-Made is a Myth, Make a Difference Together show, where we're talking with successful business owners to hear their stories of the journey to building their business. And because we know that success in business is not something that we can do on our own, we're taking some time to recognize and celebrate the folks who have helped us along our journey. Today, I'm excited to have a fellow business owner from Indiana with us today. My guest is a 2002 MAC champion in pole vault for Ball State. We'll learn a little bit more about that here in a minute. He enjoys time with his family and his 6 kids, and he's most proud of his marriage with Erica, and credits that relationship to teaching him the most that he has learned in life. It's my pleasure to welcome BJ to the show today. Hello, BJ.
Hello, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, hey, let's start with having you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit of your personal story and where you're born, where you live, and about your family.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Erie, Pennsylvania, and by my mom and dad. I had a younger sister, and did a great job, middle class family, about like firmly in the middle. And I think that like runs true for me throughout my life. It's middle this, off the rack suit, 42 regular, like all the way through. It's right in the middle. Yeah, came up out there. Went to a relatively large high school called McDowell High School out there, and some of my entrepreneurial roots kind of really even started to bud back then, when it was I struggled to listen to people when I didn't agree with them in the classroom, and it's like, you need to know this. And I'm like, well, why? And how does it work? And you kind of be the kid that pushed a little too much, where it was like, like, do you have a problem, McKay? Is there like something we need? I'm like, yeah, I just, and then sometimes I just needed to talk, because I talk to think, and,
Yeah.
in the old classroom style, sit down and just like listen, and we'll talk when we tell you to. And I'm like, yeah, when I tell you to part's the part that was a struggle. But yeah, I grew up, played a lot of sports, my family's active in our church and sports, and kind of like interspersed within different groups growing up. So it was never like one massive friend group. It was kind of a lot of trying to find my own way, a little bit more independent, which is where I found track and field and pole vaulting, which that's where I got to hang my hook. Honestly, it was kind of a salvation for me, just kind of getting around like bullying and things like that, where I had something to give me some self-confidence, and I kind of put all my stock in that.
Yeah.
And it was by success in track and field that got me a scholarship to Ball State University, which transplanted me from Pennsylvania out here to Muncie, Indiana, where I'm sitting today, and where we chose to raise our family. So 4 years there, a degree in telecommunications, then a degree in public relations and sports performance. Not sports performance, sorry, public relations, sports communication. I want to say that right. And then at the latter half of that, I was able to become the assistant men's track and field coach at Ball State for the last year of the program that we had. So it was a glorious existence for 1 year as a grad student, making money, working out most of the day, eating free food, and I got a paycheck on top of it. I feel like I'm stealing from you to do this, and I'm flying around with the best athletes. It was definitely not a deserved role, I don't think. I think I was pretty young for it, but like when you're managing a bunch of people that were your peers 2 years before,
Right.
It's sometimes awkward, and I'm sure some of the folks listening can find that that's awkward as well, when you're working and all of a sudden you're the boss.
Yeah.
And there just yesterday you weren't, and now you are. Like,
Right.
how do you navigate that difference? So I definitely stubbed my toe more than I got it right. And then since there, I thought I'd want to stay into coaching. And I did some homework, and I'm looking at like maybe Michigan State has an opening in here. And I started thinking, like an entrepreneur would, how much do like average track and field coaches make? And I started looking, and I'm like, and I knew I wanted a family. And I'm like, all right, and how do they get raises? I'm like, oh, they get fired or they move. And then they move. And then they move. And I'm like, I'm like, well, what other things are there? I looked in media, and then I looked in sales, and I looked at average people made in like media, creative sales, and other things. I looked at that, and I'm like, wow, what average people make is what the best make at this. And I'm like, I've never, it's a alpha minded person. I never thought, well, I'm not average. Like, I'd never raise my hand, I'm sure I am in many things, but that's when I kind of went off and went back to like communications and media. Got a job at a local organization here through networking through my professors, which, I encourage everybody to do if you're trying to get a foothold. Worked for Rudder Communications for 3 years, another year from an offspring from Rudder. And then from there, I launched and worked for a Chris Baggett, who's a founder of Exact Target, his company Compendium Software at the time, for a job I was immensely unprepared for, which was vice president of sales of about 14 people. So a year and some change, we worked there and had a decent amount of success and met some lifelong friends that now work with me here at ADVISA. So when I left there, I was scooped up by ADVISA a couple months later, and here I stay. It's been I'm in my 13 years in the rearview mirror, and I'm in my 14th year now there. And then in the midst of doing that, which is part of our story, is 10 years ago, like as I was transitioning into my ADVISA work, is when my business spawned. Like that's where it was like, I'm like, hey, I need to do this. And it was on a trip to Virginia to a military contractor where they asked after a day of training, hey, you want to go train? I said, Tim, I thought that's what we were doing all day. And like, no. Do you do CrossFit? And I'm like, what's CrossFit? And it was there that like I was introduced to that program in sport with, and then I watched a 55-year-old guy beat the crap out of me. And I'm like, I'm a Division I athlete. I had this thing. I'm like, all right, I'm going to be fine. It's like, no, there's levels to this game, kid, and you're not at mine. And it was like, I want to do this. And then, it was more than a couple years I waited. Like, oh, someone will open one of these in Muncie. And no one did. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm that someone.
Nice. So tell us about your family. You married and I think 6 kids, right?
That's right. Yeah, my wife Erica and I, we've been married for I think 19 years now. 19 years. If I get it wrong, she'll let me know. And thank you. And then we have a daughter about to go to college. I have a son who's a sophomore here at a local high school, a daughter who's a freshman. And then I have a daughter who is in 7th grade here. And I also have a 2-year-old son and a 9-month-old daughter. So they're great, active, healthy, fun. I mean, it's like we travel together, we do stuff together. I mean, I would have brought them here if they wouldn't have been trying to lean in and say hi to you while we were there. It's like great, fun kids. And yeah, it's awesome. How about always wanted to have a big family, and I married someone who had similar goals, which is great.
Fantastic. So I'm sure with that big a family, there's lots of funny stories. So tell us, is there a story your family likes to tell about you that you'd be willing to share with us?
I was thinking about that when you prompted me before, and I'm trying to think of it's hard to find a story. I think I have one that's probably worth retelling. I tried to take my kids on, before COVID, it was way easier, on a quarterly plane trip with dad.
Okay.
So it's cool. We get some 1-to-1 when there's 6 kids. Everyone's wearing everyone else's clothes, and it's kind of hand me down. So I'm like, this would be that cool. I travel for work a little bit, so I can bring them with me, and we actually go on a thing. I'm not working. I'm going just for them.
Yeah.
So we decided, my daughter and I, so I'm like, what do you want to do? She's like, I want to be around dolphins. What if we did a dolphin training thing? So we found one in Key Largo. So we made a thing about it. We went down. And I'm kind of getting things scheduled, and I'm a big picture. I'm like a visionary strategy level thinker, which makes my weakness details and like execution and consistency and execution. So it just came to roost this time. So we got down, everything's set up, and I'm real proud of myself. We get off the airplane. We look, weather's beautiful. You're driving out of there. I think we went in like February or January, something where it was like garbage up here. Yeah, in Indiana, but down there it was like it's all like it always is. And you get off, and there's the blue water. We drive to the Airbnb we got, and it looks great. We go in, and I'm punching the code in, and it doesn't work. I'm thinking, I'm like, why doesn't this work? And I'm like, oh, I got the place the next day.
Oh no,
on there. So it's like, all right, well, I'll get a hotel. And I'm looking at hotels, and like everything was like skyrocket high, and there was and I'm like, all right. I'm like, I told my daughter, and she's looking at me like, what are we going to do? Like, she's freaking out. I'm like, we got a car. It's beautiful out 24 hours a day. So it's like, we're not like, I'm like, where do you park it? And we had a friend that had a place in Key West. We just kept driving 2 hours down, but like, that's a story now. Like, careful when you go with dad, you might get there and there'll be no place to stay. And I was joking with my wife, like, how do you know what to pack? Right. Like when you go, and I'm like, well, they take money. And I'm pretty sure they have clothes that they would wear there. I'm never really worried about it, but that time it bit me. And my daughter holds that over me. Are you sure? Dad, are you sure we're all set up? And I'm like, all right.
Nice. So BJ, you told us how the business came about. At what point did you have the confidence that you could run your own business?
Tim, I think the most vulnerable and true answer is I never did.
Hmm.
Like, I don't think I ever quite had it. And in a moment, like and I think that word comes from my upbringing. My parents are very, like, it's almost traditionalist, even though they were boomers. Like, it was that kind of mindset where it's like, you get a job, you kind of work your way up. If you get into GE, you can just work. It was kind of that mindset where you can just work your way up and work your way up. So it's kind of, I was never wired that way. So I was always rubbing against that. And I'm like, well, who's that person's boss? And who's that person's boss? And then you'd finally get up to Jack Welch, and I'd be like, oh, who's his boss? Well, no one. I'm like, I want his job. And she's like, well, that's not how it works. And I'm like, I think I told my mom once, I'm like, well, he was a baby once. Like, yeah, I'm like, why doesn't it work for me? What's different about me? And so I had like this, I have probably more risk aversion than you would think for how I was wired. So I struggled with it. I'm like, how do I do this? How do I make it work? Like, I mean, I do really well with my consulting, and I still do. So it was like, there was something to lose. And I just found like being middle class is like almost one of the worst places to go from like what you're currently doing to really wealthy, or to doing your own thing, because you have something to lose. You have a warm head, you have a warm meal, you have relationships, you have something to lose.
Yeah.
People that have less, like, all right, I'm already comfortable. Like, what do I have to risk? If I'm back here, I got it. And then
Sure.
people that have more are surrounded with the network of people that know how to keep more. They know how to
Yeah.
do it. So you're in
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
weird place where it's like, whoa, well, I don't want to go down there, and I'd sure like that, but it's going to cost me this level of comfort and security that I had. So I struggled with it all the way to the point where I'm like, hey, I have a business plan. I met with the small business development group. I'm kind of going through all the cycles. I'm like, how do I
Yeah.
de-risk this? How do I de-risk? What don't I know?
Yeah.
I ran into a couple things. One is my confidence didn't increase. The more doors I opened, the more I realized like this is way more expensive than I thought it was.
Yeah.
There's so much more I don't know. Like, I'm having HVAC conversations, and I'm having conversations on like leasing, and I have no idea. I'm like, is this a good lease? Like, is this I mean, how do I, so I talk, that's pretty good. And that's like this real kind of foggy gray. I had no, like, it was like running around like on a map in a video game with no compass. And I'm running around, and everything I learned was, you don't know that. And you also don't know that. You need that, but you don't know that. And I'm like, I couldn't even put it in order. So I finally got to a point where, like, through the SBDC, some coaches there, some other things there, I kind of got a framework. I was like, all right, this will work.
Yeah.
And I went to the bank, and they're like, we're not going to give you money. I'm like, all right. Now I need to rewind a little bit. It was the second thing. I actually went to my boss, Heather Haas, who is, we'll probably talk more about later. And I said, hey, I need to talk to you. This is an airport. I just mustered up, if I had confidence of one thing and mustering up courage, confidence being like, I don't think it's confidence. I think it's courage. I was scared to have the conversation because I'm about to tell my boss, hey, I want to start a new thing, but I'm going to keep doing this thing. And I think I can do both really well, because I wasn't like leaving to start like a tech startup company. I wasn't going to leave. I was starting a gym, Tim. Like, it wasn't like I was going to go to a gym. And I was going to have, I'm like, this would be like a fun project. And I get to use a lot of my consulting experience. Like, in my mind, I kind of rationalized it all.
Yeah.
I told her, and she said, she's like, you have my full support.
Nice.
Like, you need to do this. And I'm like, that was like literally, that's when my confidence opened up.
Yeah.
Because I knew I had the blessing of someone that I am super loyal to, I care deeply about, and who trained me and taught me so much that I'm like, if she would have said no, there's a good chance we're not talking today.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
it would have been all I needed to say, all right, I tried. They said no. I did it. I took it as far as I could. So that was kind of my out. So there was no real kind of like Herculean moment where it's like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make it's going to go just like I thought. But then I got pushed into it. The banks wouldn't give me money. I talked to friends. They wouldn't give me money. And then finally I just went before I think all I had was the LLC, which you pay like whatever, like $60 to get, like, and I got that done. And I sold probably 20 to 25 memberships, full paid for a year up front. And then I went back to the bank with that cash, and I said, like, well, you don't have any assets, you're leasing, you don't have all this other stuff. I'm like, hey, I'll personally guarantee. And then like, they're looking at me still. And I said, hey, how many buildings and stoves and ovens and chairs in a restaurant are you going to finance? How many hot dogs have they sold? How many people walk in their building? I'm like, I have 25 members to a gym that doesn't exist anywhere but my head.
Yeah.
Like, you're worried if I can sell and do this once I have a building and I have coaches, and give me a break. And it was enough to give me enough money, which wasn't anywhere near what I needed, to go back to individual investors to say, hey, I went through bank due diligence. All right, we'll give you money. It was like this. I didn't know that's how it went.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know that they needed to de-risk, and some of them were giving me a little more, but I always asked for an amount so small for what I believed, because you never really know that person's total net worth was, that it was almost forgettable. So it was like 5 grand, 10 grand. Sometimes it was bigger than that, but it was always like, you sure you don't need more? When they said that, I'm like, nope, Tim,
Sure.
that's all I need. That's
Yeah.
all. I'm going to go find some more friends. So that was kind of if there was a jump off point, that's the story.
I love it. BJ, tell us a little bit more about the company. What do you guys do specifically and how you help people?
Yeah. So the Arsenal Fitness, we're founded in 2013. So we're coming up on 10 years. And we started off as Muncie's first CrossFit affiliate. Muncie CrossFit is like another DBA for what we were doing. And what we did and started out over, like we continue to do it over 10 years, is like high intensity functional group training. So when you go into a class, when you come in, there's a whiteboard talk, you get introduced to people, and then there's typically some sort of warm up that's dedicated to what you're about to do. It's got dynamic movement because a lot of people are desk jockeys that we work with, just like me, sitting, standing, driving all day. So we're loosening up shoulders and things like that. Then we move into strength, which is some form of powerlifting or weightlifting. That's all. We call it like earn the barbell style. So sometimes that might not be, oh, I'm throwing a barbell around. I mean, well, if you're 74 years old, Tim, and you've been sedentary for 20 years, that's not, your experience in that class might be different than the 22-year-old kid next to you. So you do strength, and then you move in and do something we call they call it the WOD, workout of the day, or we call it a metcon, metabolic conditioning, which is basically I just basically, hey, are we doing aerobics yet? Are we getting an aerobics class yet? Where's the aerobics? What's the aerobics part of the class? Where you're doing something over time and there's a little competitive nature to it, and then your heart rate's getting up, you're sweating, you're having fun, and it's a lot like sports and when you're a little kid, middle school or high school, high fiving people. So that's kind of was our core thing for the first probably 5 or 6 years. From there, where we do most of our work now is actually one-to-one personal training, nutrition coaching, and youth sports performance. And that goes all the way up to college athletes, both individuals and then college programs that we do work for. So it was a lot about like learning as we go and the constant mindset. I mean, in the meantime, I'm consulting with manufacturing companies, engineering companies, and hearing how they're doing things. And I'm like, this Six Sigma process sounds like how everybody should do everything. This sounds like why aren't we setting a target and reevaluate? Why, so we kept borrowing and stealing and advancing. And I'm like, this isn't good enough. This part, well, why isn't anything good enough, BJ? I'm like, no. The part I'm focusing on isn't good enough.
Yeah.
This part's good enough to build this much money to provide, like, I want it to go here. And I think if we learn, so it was a lot of that learning that to get us where we're at now. When you walk in, Tim, we have a robust assessment process to make sure throughout your journey with us, you will not experience pain. You're going to avoid injury, both in the gym and outside the gym. And we want to increase your energy to the most degree that we can. So you can go out, be the best leader you can be, parent you can be, son, daughter you can be in the world. So when you're out there and you're not just sore all the time, telling stories about, here's what I did today. And I joke with my kids. It's like, Dad, you put your score in right? And I'm like, son, I'm 43. No one cares. Like, it's not about that anymore. It's about like coming and being the best me. So, but that's what we do. And we have a 10-year vision for where we're going, which is even obviously like the big, hairy, audacious goal, you would call it, Tim, for what that might be, which is going to cause a lot of disruption. And we have to once again leave our middle class zone of comfort as a small business to say, hey, a lot of these, we got to leave a lot of the stuff behind and drop a lot of the stuff to become what we're going to become. And I use the butterfly analogy a lot, where I'm like, hey, you think we're awesome right now. All we are is the fastest caterpillar. Like, we need to go in the cocoon. I'm like, do you know what happens? Like, I talk to my team all the time. Like, do you know what happens when the caterpillar goes to the cocoon? No, they turn to a butterfly. I'm like, no, you know what they do first? They dissolve into liquid. They cease to exist completely. I'm like, can you imagine? And I just joke and I'm like, oh, this is hard, BJ. I'm like, you wonder what that feels like for that caterpillar?
Yeah.
You wonder, like, do you think it even knows? It's just kind of going through the motions, and then it comes out the other side of, oh, a beautiful butterfly. So I think we're kind of in a next, over the next couple of years, metamorphosis. But that's what we do. Yeah.
So BJ, share a story where someone pushed you or inspired you that you could do it, even though maybe you didn't think you could, and the impact that person had on you.
I have a few names. I mean, honestly, Tim, a lot of the people that I've looked up to the most, I've got a lot of advice from, are dead people that wrote books. Yeah. So there's a lot of those people when I couldn't find in my own network, whether it be like Stoic philosophers, Christian thinkers, like, I mean, how many times have I read Peter Drucker's Effective Executive? like wore it out. Like, I'm like, all right, what do people smarter than me do? Like,
Yeah.
all right, this person seems like they've made it. Like, what's the rule? So there's a lot of those, but if the people that I would thank, I think the first person I think of is Heather Haas, who
Mhm.
is the person who, we're in a hiring process to join our consulting firm. She believed in me when other people didn't, and she saw something that I'd even see. It's like, well, you're gonna work with businesses and you're gonna consult and you're gonna do. I'm like, I've been managing people for a year.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't, but I don't. I'm part of the product. That's like you coming to me, Tim. Like, all right, Tim, what's the program? Well, it's nothing from you, Tim. Nothing your experience you're gonna know. But I have this like. That's how I felt, and I'm like, that just feels like I don't know I can do it. But she believed in me even through the first 3 years where it was a struggle, a real
Yeah.
struggle for me. So she was one where it's like, you can do it. I believe in you. And then she just left to let me go figure it out.
Yeah.
Like it was like exactly what I needed.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, another person that I think about is a gentleman named Will Davis. He was a co-founder of Ontario Systems up here in Muncie, and he's a person I found a little later, but it was a part of my leadership journey where I needed a steady hand.
Mm.
I needed somebody to be like, just all right, let's just think about like where this at. And he really taught me through his story and his coaching of me, like imbuing what you're doing with your virtue.
Mm.
Like remember like who needs to be doing and showing up like that and having that kind of executive presence or leadership presence is a function of how you live your life every day, no matter what you're doing. And the more authentic that is, that you advance it, the easier all this stuff you're frantic about
Sure.
is,
Yeah.
because it's all leveled out on this playing field that the things you can control happen between your ears and they happen with the time and hours that you have in your day with your two hands. And if
Sure.
that's consistent, it's this constant solid landing place regardless of the problem. And the last person I think is when my dad was passing away, which happened almost a couple years ago now, from pancreatic cancer.
Wow.
And my dad and mom are like very big mentors for me. They're bastions of stability and everything. But when it comes to like starting a business, this was the weird thing. They're like, well, we don't like, it was kind of like I sailed off from there. But when he was going through that, John, who I stay really close with, he's close to my family. He's in his mid-70s right now, was just a constant voice in my head reminding me of how much I got this and how much sometimes he looked up to me. And that was always puzzling to me. I'm like, but you made it, man. You're the sage and you're the guru on the mountaintop. Like, what do you mean you look up to me for what I do? And it was like those kernels that I don't know, in like an email, one line email, it's right on my wall over here. Like probably meant nothing. I should probably tell DJ. Like it probably like didn't even think about it. But to me, it's like still there whenever I'm like
I,
going through a slump. I can't solve a problem. It's like,
yeah.
BJ, everybody hates you at the business because of this is what you do. And it's just like, all right, and I just see those as like, all right, you're not infallible. You're not perfect. You're probably screwing. There's probably more things you're screwing up now than you even realize right now. However, you've overcome bigger things than the molehill that
Right.
you're making a mountain today. So I think those are probably three that really jump out as it comes to like mentors, as it relates to starting a business, believing in myself, and kind of imbuing me with the confidence and perseverance to keep pushing, even though the dark kept getting darker.
Right. So,
Keep going. Are you sure, Tim? Yeah,
yeah,
BJ, I'm sure you tell your clients, just keep going. I'm like, I'm
yeah,
scared and I can't see. And you
yeah,
keep telling me, it's like, and then sure enough, you break through and it's like, it's amazing. Like right afterwards,
yes,
it's like you tell yourself, well, I should have known that. Of course
yeah,
this was going to, it's like, I'm like, dude, yesterday you didn't feel that way. Yesterday you were going to close your, yesterday it
yeah.
was like all this like nihilistic thinking about how it goes. And then the next day it's like, of course I was going to get through. Of
I,
course,
I
it's like, give
remember,
me a break.
I remember my first year of having this business, and my coach kept telling me, "Hey, Tim, it's about being persistent and consistent, and I know you're going to get there." And I'm like, "How do you know that?" And she's like, "Well, because I know that you're doing all the things you're supposed to be doing, and it's just a matter of time until you hit that critical mass or the hockey stick effect." Right. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm paying a good amount of money for her guidance and direction. So I don't see it. I don't believe it. But if she says that it's true, then I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, you know what? The label I put on that is outsourced confidence.
Oh, I like
Like,
that.
how
Yeah.
do I outsource my confidence? Like, why do you pay coaches? Why do you pay Tim? Why do you pay BJ? Why do you pay?
Yeah.
I've had fitness consulting firms that I've been with that have given me just treasure troves of information. And I'm like, hey, if we're paying this money, just so you know, we're students, we're listening.
Yeah.
We're not here to evaluate what they're telling us. We're here to do it. And I have to tell my team that. And I'm telling my team, I'm really telling me.
Yeah.
Because like I always want to tweak, and I'm like, nope, just yes, sir, Tim. Like, and then go execute. And then after I execute everything Tim told me to do, then I'm allowed to be creative.
Right.
Then I'm allowed to like go. But it's like if I can't, because you think about like the business, that what makes a business tick. And this is me on like the other side of it. I'm gonna have a decade-long business. Most CrossFit affiliates don't make anywhere near that long. Right. And we're in that. We'll probably get a plaque or something nice from CrossFit. You know, CrossFit's listening. That'd be nice. You know, or a watch or something. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's the unsexy, consistent blocking and tackling that like I honestly need most of the coaching to stick to, because it seems boring. It doesn't seem dynamic. It doesn't seem interesting. It seems ordinary. I'm like, how's everyone else not doing this? Like, how's like, I mean, but I joke with like with even new coaches at our gym. We have 9 of them now. We'll probably have 11 starting next week. It's like, I'm like, listen, like you're going to look back in a little while, and it'll seem a little while, and there's going to be a mountain behind you. Like, oh, there's going to be a mountain. Like, don't look back. You're going to be making this mountain a couple grains of salt a day at a time.
Yeah.
So if you keep thinking about that mountain, it's going to discourage you. I just need you to think about the salt. You're walking the salt or walking the sand over, and just you put it down and just like drop it behind you. Just keep throwing it behind you every day. Just throw the salt, just throw the sand behind you, and then all of a sudden, like BJ will tell you when to look.
Yeah.
And I'll know when to do it, because it's like it's when you've gone into the abyss of your unknowing so far that you're too deep. I'm like, hey, come back out, come back out. I can't do it. Look at everything. I'm like, I want you to turn around. Look. Oh my God, what is that? That is your mountain. Look at how high it is. Look at how, I'm like, I've done all that stuff. All right, great. Here we go.
Yep.
There's the sand pit. And you get them right back on, like you get going. It's but it's like that every one of those pieces of sand, hey, consistent phone calls, keeping in touch with your best customers, asking your best customers for advice, like going all these things that you just like if you just drop them through over and over and over again, your top line keeps going up, and then you keep having the accounting bean counting meetings, which by the way are the most hard for me, if you can't tell. I'm like the top line guy, and I like the big vision, but it's like, hey, if you keep spending more than you make, this doesn't work, dude. You know, and it's like, all right, and then you listen. I joke, my another one of my mentors. I mean, this is the self-made is a myth conversation. Is like my bookkeeper, Jackie Christ, is like my secret weapon. She has like literally a stamp with my signature on it. And at times during these stretches, I'm like, I'm paid last, and I go to her and say, hey, so how's it going? Can't pay you this month. And I'm like, okay, like, can't, like whatever, like it's coming. She's that one that's like, I actually like dotted line report to Jackie in my own business, because I'm like, I don't have that part of my brain. I don't think about conservation.
Yeah.
I think about opportunity, but it's like putting that team together that really levels me out, where I can stay in my lane, and then my ego has to take a downside. Like, hey, listen, like that's their control. We have to delegate that authority, which means authority to me, to this person, or else I'm wasting their time and I'm wasting my money, and I'll just go keep screwing it up and be average. Is that what you want, ego? And it's like, yeah, but it's a battle, because your ego keeps telling you, well, I think we could spend it. Oh, let's like, no. She said no. Yeah, we're not doing it because we care about her, and she's smart. Over and over again.
BJ, we know that business success doesn't happen in isolation. So tell us about one of your challenges over the years, and maybe another business owner who came alongside you and helped you get through that.
So early on, within the first couple of years, I actually had a co-founder, and like it was a partnership, and we ended up separating, and it was pretty messy. Like I mean, and for me, for my part, which I can own, like I didn't really even know how to do that. Like it was more a function of just ignorance. Like how do you do? I know it needs to happen. I knew that.
Yeah.
Like, but I don't know how it does. So it just got ugly, because it was his first business. It was just a lack of like no one knew how to do things, and it got uglier because one party assumed the other party did know what was going on.
Right.
And it was like, no, neither party knows what's going on. That's why this is tough. Yeah. So after that, I mean, we went through a few cycles where the fact that the business even existed for even a 3-year stretch was a miracle. Like I was paying people out of my own checking account just to keep the wheels on the bus, to try to turn a corner. I probably took out too many loans to start it, because I wanted visionary guy. Like it's got to look like this right from the get go. Yeah. Like I like bought that myth, and I just literally wholesaled into it, and I paid for it. I paid for that education, probably more than my kids will pay for college. I paid for it, and I didn't even, which was unnecessary. I guess it was necessary for me, because I'm like, it was like I needed a blunt force instrument to to get me. So it was at that time, I think that's where I met, I ran into Will Davis, who I talked to about before. You know, he had grew a company right here on Muncie that was extraordinarily successful, more successful than I think we'll ever become. That was that guiding hand, that steady hand that came in. I think the Small Business Development Center at different times, when I came back in, I mean, this was like, they literally have a trail of tears of these stories of like people. And I'm like, hey, like, what do you do here? And they would redirect my energy because I didn't have any place to go on that. And I think further down, after I got out of that pit, and then my Heather Haas and our chairman Bob Wilson were great helping me. I'm like, I'm running into some things here, work me through it, just kind of lifting me up through it as I went back into the battle. But later on, when we got stagnant as a business, we were good enough to look like, all right, you're legitimate, good enough. And for a while, that felt good.
Yeah,
because everyone's getting paid. I was getting paid. All the girls are getting paid. I'm like, this is like we made it to promised land, everybody. For a while, you're like, that's enough. But then it's like things got stale and inconsistent, and there weren't really good policies and workbooks and like scaling. Like none of that was left because it was literally like I was so just relieved to be past that like, and I didn't have anybody like you, Tim, in my ear. All right, here's what you got to do next, BJ. I didn't have an interval 90-day meeting. I didn't have a month-to-month meeting where someone was like, all right, great. You've had a couple months to enjoy that. You've had 6 months, like whatever it was, someone to get me back on. You're like, you're the visionary. You need to bring. There was nobody there. Yeah. So when that got stale, we worked with a coach out of Ann Arbor. His name is Doug Chapman. He's a brilliant programmer, has coached a lot of CrossFit Games athletes. And like we leaned on him for programming, like product. If you think about where that would fit for other people, like product, how do I make my product better? Go outside the world, my community I live in, find somebody doing it at a level far beyond ours and get as much of that brought in and imbued into what we're doing. That was one. And even more recently, within the last few years, we synced up with a group called Active Life. And they're out of Long Beach, New York. And we spent a lot of money for us at the time for counsel that like brought us in with other gyms around the country. And I think they might even have some international that are aspiring to lift out of the same thing. So finding those people that are on that next 2 or 3 levels on the ladder was the hunt. Because somebody as good as me, I'm like, well, I already know how to be this good. Yep. Lesser, it's like I'm in a coaching. Well, it feels good. Feels good to coach those people, but like I don't know how much I'm growing. But finding those people not way up here, it's like, oh, you want to be rich? Just read Warren Buffett's books. I'm like, that's not going to get you rich, man. Why? I'm like, he's worth $65 billion. Like you have 100 grand. Like I needed that next 2 rungs that they still felt, they were still remember in their veins what it was like to be here, and they can really articulate those next couple rungs up there. The investment we made there, which is substantial, still pays us dividends.
Yeah. Awesome. So that kind of leads into this last question. Jim Rohn says we become the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. So as you think about that and reflect on business owners who believe that they should do it on their own, or they are doing it on their own, what advice would you have for them?
I think the first one, the first question I would ask them if they're sitting in front of me is like, well, how's it going? Or like the Dr. Phil style. How's that working out for you? Yeah. Odds are, if you're even talking to you or you're talking to me, Tim, we probably know the answer to that. There's a couple things. I have too many plates spinning. There's too much going on. I know what to do to grow. I have no time to do it. Everyone around me is an idiot. If it's not me, no one could do it. Like, it's like, I can't get good people. And I'm like, it's like a lot of this, it's stuff. And it's a function of, I'm like, it's a certain lack of self-awareness. And that's mired in ego. And I say ego, but like people think of ego as this prefrontal cortex. You can see ego and you just let it own you. That's not how it works. Ego rests and loves to sit in the subconscious and just lurk and tell you should be able to do it, Tim. You don't need that person. You do it. Don't listen. You don't need it. It's the ego, because in someone wired to be an entrepreneur, to be a business owner, like that's kind of almost like the old school work style where you get in at 6 a.m. and you don't leave until the last. It's the same like specter lurking in the background. So I tell them, and it's like, what's missing? And I would basically start asking them and start like, all right, like let's build some criteria. If this, if then, if what's going to happen? And then listen to their cycle of either resentment or excuses that cut them off to realizing that reality and say, do you think, and then when you break it down, you go into the top 5 people. And you think there's anybody that knows just like this, if there's 6 lanes or 6 things that they said aren't happening, I'm not making as much as I should. I don't have as much time as I should. I'm stuck in the boat. Like whatever their thing is.
Yeah.
It's like a different like pie chart with different, but it's the same stuff, just different segments based on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Like, do you think there's somebody that knows something about that you could probably bring on, consult, like have a fractional accountant, like which was what I did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there probably is. Well, what would your life be like? Let's go to the other end. They do that. What would they be doing? And all of a sudden, like the job description comes up. And like, all right, you've lightened that load. How much time and energy did you buy back?
Yeah.
Oh, I could do this. All right, stop right there. Let's go to the next one. Like you just keep going down to the point where it's like literally you could outsource 100% of everything you complain to me about on paper. Like you can't because you got to pay those. You know what I mean? If there's no cash flow, whatever. But like that's the air we breathe. It's there, but it's like now it's like I can help them prioritize the top 2 or 3, which means you have to go in, you have to sacrifice your ego and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. I am not doing this part well. I need to realign and then you align. There's fractional people for $250 a month. There's fractional people for 15 grand a month. How big's your problem?
Yeah.
Like what's going on? And if you're, by the way, if you're bringing in less than 50 grand a month and you have a $15,000 a month problem, there's other things we probably need to talk about where it's like, what did you do? Who sued you? Like what happened? Like it's, but I think that's kind of like, those are the type of questions that I think help me.
Yeah.
When I was asked, because when you're in that pit of despair, everything seems frozen.
Yeah.
It seems like I can't move. So like everything you're telling me, Tim, I understand. I logically understand. It sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
That sounds great. But here's why I can't. And here's why this person won't let me. Or here's why these employees, you start rationalizing your employees. It's like, and I'm like, great. It's like, it's the same thing. You're frozen in place. How's that working out for you? Like at some point, anybody you coach or anybody that would come to me for coaching, like they have to be ready to be self-aware or it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And they have to be ready to detach. You have to detach from at least like one little pinky finger, Tim, off of one of these things so that we can start paving this path to see like, see, you're starting to feel better. Even then you get that first half hour in a week back. That one time, like at the end of a week on a Friday, they get back and I'm like, hey, tell you, what was the victory last week? Man, on Friday, I typically left at 5. I left at 4:30 because like the bookkeeper, and I didn't have to do it. And I just like left. I'm like, snapshot that. How'd that feel?
Yeah.
Great. Great. Like, great. So what do we need to do to make sure we still have that half hour next week? It's just like once that road starts, it's so much easier to advance as a small business owner.
Yeah.
And a mid-sized business owner. And man, Tim, in my consulting, I see organizations without strategic plans, without processes that are in the hundreds of millions that you're like, how and when you tell that to someone who doesn't know, who maybe hasn't gone down the roads that maybe we have, it's unfathomable to them.
Right.
It's almost like that, like when I talk to my kids about a pro athlete and how I can see that some are being financially irresponsible and it's going to get them. And there's others that I try to show them they're both really good at basketball. However, I want you to know that this person is going to be a generational wealthy beyond this. And it seems like this person is going to be irrelevant publicly and broke likely, like very soon.
Yeah.
And they just watched. I'm like, hey, remember we were talking about so-and-so? Yeah. I'm like, it turns out like, they work at this place now. They work there. I'm like, guess where LeBron James is working? It's like, who did he surround himself with? What advice did he take? I think it's true right down to us that like, well, they have everyone that's there is better than me, knows more than me, has their stuff together. And I mean, that one quote that comes to mind, I can cap it with this on this part, Tim, is there's 2 stories. One is the gentleman F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote The Great Gatsby. If I'm correct, he's like, the thing about, I think it's the opening line, the thing about rich people is they're different than you and me. And his friend Ernest Hemingway immediately made fun of him. He's like, yeah, they have more money. Just kind of like they're not special. It's like they suck just as much as you and me. They question themselves. They're as depressed and lonely. It's like it doesn't change anything other than the numbers on your bank account, your little Chase app or whatever you're looking at. And the second story was one I got from a book that Ryan Holiday wrote. He's like popular writing about the Stoic philosophy. He's the ego is the enemy. It's from Stillness is the Key. And Kurt Vonnegut, Indiana guy, gosh, who was the other guy? It was Kurt Vonnegut and another author. It'll come to me. They were invited to a palatial estate of this, like he calls him a boring billionaire, where they're looking at all this stuff. And Kurt Vonnegut's like, no, the guy who wrote Catch 22 is who he was with. whose
Okay.
name is still escaping me. He's like, man, he's like, can you believe all this stuff? And he's like, yeah, I got something this guy will never have. He's like, oh yeah, what's that? He's like, the knowledge that I have enough.
Oh.
And it was like, that's kind of the counterpoint to like, where's the wealth? It's like, sometimes when I'm in that pit and I'm in despair, I'm not recognized what I need to be grateful for and what I have accomplished. Other times you get over your skis and you think your success has a lot more to do with you than it actually does.
Yeah.
I'm great. I mean, I've coached CEOs and I'm like, are they ready for the question? Is this happening because of you or in spite of you? It's like once you start seeing how things are working,
Yeah.
and then when you get a recession and there's a dip or a market shifts and everything else, it's like I joked I was on a board that went into massive duress and all the board members left and they were left like everyone's surly. We're in like a bottom room and I'm young. At the time, I had no idea what I was doing there. I think I had one line of wisdom. Like, well, there's one good thing. Why? We get to all learn if we're actually good leaders or not. Because there's nowhere to hide. It's like at this point, like this is what a leader's supposed to do. Before it's like, hey, there's money coming in. The not-for-profit's doing great. It's like, great.
Yes.
I'm on a board. It's like, what am I even doing? Am I helping here, Tim? Like, am I doing? But when everything goes away and there's like 6 of you and there were 20, guess
Yeah.
what? Are you prepared? Did you have a coach? Do you know how to handle these? Who are you going to call when you can't call anyone else? It's like, I think that like small business owners that are stuck and even mid-sized business owners that are stuck, it's like they don't, for whatever reason, they're on a skip track that doesn't get them on that phone. That doesn't get there. They don't know who to call.
Yeah.
And the ones that got me, God bless you, the ones that go on to Google, business coach, like that just go out and just throw a ringer out there. I did that for a life coach when I was going through some struggles.
Yeah.
Found one off of Google. Well, who'd you use? You probably use this. You probably want a book. And I'm like, yeah, Google. Typed in my problem. Dude in Indianapolis came up. I'm like, wow, he seems like good. And he was great. Like, I'd still consider him a friend. And he did a great job. So,
BJ, you've been blessed with some incredible people in your life and on your business journey. If they were all here today on the show, what would you want to say to them?
I mean, obviously the biggest is like all caps, thank you. And I think what I would thank them for is fostering belief in me that I didn't have in myself, for their patience in like my stupidity, especially when I was like hard headed and I didn't listen and I came back with my tail between my legs. Like, yeah, just it went how you said. And but they didn't punt on me because I didn't listen to them. I think that's a big one. And I think that you can extend to patience, but it's like, I think it's like the compassion. Like I don't have a lot of self-compassion. I don't foster, like my self-talk tends to be, you can do more, push harder. There's a lot of that in there that's got limiting returns. If you don't want to be like the horse from Animal Farm and work yourself to glue, that's got limiting returns. But they like for the times they told me to slow down, take a vacation. Hey, what would it be like if you took 3 weeks off? Could you do a month? Could you, like these challenges? I'm like, I thought we were talking about growing.
Right.
I thought we were talking about like, what are we, I'm confused. Like, I'm not tired. It seems like you're tired. I don't feel tired. It's like working with me and being patient with me throughout that. And that's like another name right now that's in my life that is a executive coach. His name is Jim Struck. I don't know if you know him. You happen to know Jim? He's probably the best of the best as far as I know. He is like the epitome of that voice in my head. That's just like there. And I'm super grateful for him. And he never lets me. And I think the other thing is they never, for the ones that corner me in my own BS and never let me escape. Like they love me enough to pin me all the way into the corner and say, like, I'm not going to let you out of this one. Cause like you this is the moment.
Yeah.
You need to be aware of this. This is the moment you have to own this thing. And I think that most people around me, most family, if you think about, if you're listening to this, like business, friends, family, employees, everything else, they will mostly be nice and kind and they'll rest in your zone of comfort, or they will be your focus because they're mad at you, quote unquote, you about something that takes your attention. Very few are those people that love you enough to corner you and say, hey, you can do better than this. This is beneath you. You can like pushing you there. And it's like, I have not made that easy for those people. So that's what I would say.
Amen to that. BJ, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
No, you're very welcome. It was an honor to be invited, Tim. Thank you.
To everyone who tuned in, thanks for listening to the Self-Made is a Myth show with your host, Coach Tim Campsell. Be sure to help spread this movement. by liking the show and posting about it on your social media. And to join our movement, go to bemadtogether.com. All right, folks, that's a wrap. Make sure to pay it forward, and we'll see you all next time. Take care.